This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
And welcome back, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and yes, we're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is no stranger to the X-Zone Nation. John Michael Greer is with us. And John Michael Greer is a certified master conserver, organic gardener, and a scholar of ecological history. The current Grand Druid of the AODA. His widely cited blog, the Archdruid Report, deals with the peak oil and other interesting daily affecting topics that affect Mother Earth and each and every one of us. We're going to be talking to John Michael about his new book, one of his 3 new books, I should say, Mystery Teachings from the Living Earth. And first of all, John, great having you back with us again.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on again.
What do you think is going on in the world today, John? You know, we've just gotten over the disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. Mm-hmm. We've got the melting of the polar ice cap. We've got animals that are going on to the endangered species list because they can't survive because of the ecology. It seems one thing after the other. Then you throw in the trials and tribulation of the different countries of this world. Like, if you'll excuse the expression, it looks like we're going to hell in a handbasket.
Basically, this is what happens when you try to pursue a fantasy of limitless economic growth on a finite planet. All these different things that you've mentioned are symptoms of the head-on collision of this fantasy that we can just keep on growing our population, growing our incomes, growing our luxuries indefinitely, when the planet is only so large. It only contains so much resources. And that's not going to change, no matter how loudly we yell like a bunch of 5-year-olds, wanting there to be more cookies in the cookie jar when we've not only emptied the cookie jar but pushed it off the shelf and broken it.
John, why is spiritual ecology becoming so popular these days?
Well, I think on the one hand, there's a growing number of people who are realizing the stupidity of our collective relationship with the planet that keeps us all alive. On the other hand, there are people who are starting to realize that a lot of what's wrong with contemporary spirituality, and especially with the alternative spiritual scene and with the mainstream, is that it doesn't pay attention to the same principles that we see in ecology. Just as we've got people saying, well, I want mine, I want it all, I want it now, forget about the planet. On a physical plane, we also have people saying the same thing and claiming that it's spirituality. And you know what? It doesn't work there either.
So are we looking at the breaking point of our very existence?
I don't think so. Human beings are some of nature's supreme generalists. We're right up there with cockroaches and rats as far as, we can live just about anywhere, and we're very hard to get rid of. Yeah. You may not think that as a flattering comparison, but if you've ever tried to exterminate rats, they've got something going for them.
Exactly.
No, I think humanity's going to be around. The planet's going to be around. I mean, this Earth has survived things that are so much vaster than anything humanity can do. It is not funny. The question is just how badly we're going to mess things up for ourselves. Just how badly are we going to suffer? How many of our own dreams are we going to stomp into the dust by our own idiocy in dealing with the facts of existence?
John, stand by, my friend. Exonation. Our special guest is John Michael Greer. Here's the address for his blog site: www.thearchdruidreport.blogspot.com. And John Michael Greer and I will be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Explanation, John Michael Greer is my special guest, and we're talking about John's new book. It's entitled Mystery Teachings from the Living Earth, An Introduction to Spiritual Ecology. And if you'd like to find out more about John, he's got a great blog at www.thearchdruidreport.blogspot.com. John, what was your inspiration for writing your new book, Mystery Teachings from the Living Earth?
Well, I've been talking for quite a while in books and in my blog and in several other places about the consequences, as I mentioned earlier, of our idiotic relationship to the planet that keeps us all alive, and all of it was very much focused on here's this situation, here's that situation, here's our dependence on non-renewable resources and so on. All symptoms, all talking about these sort of specific applications, and it occurred to me, and partly it was inspired by people asking, okay, what's the basic set of ideas here? What are the underlying principles, both in terms of the practical world and in terms of the spiritual dimension, which of course I do talk about as a druid, as an archdruid. And so it was a matter of sitting down and saying, okay, how am I going to communicate to people who probably didn't learn a thing about ecology in school? I mean, it's not as though we teach it, and who have ideas of spirituality that have been very much shaped by this notion that we've got that the universe owes us whatever we happen to desire. How can I communicate that to them? And so it was from a process of mulling that over and thinking through it and saying, okay, how can we take things right down to basics, that this book took shape.
What's the main message? Is it too late, John? Can we correct what we've done wrong? And why are humans so stupid?
Well, I'm going to take those in reverse order. Why are humans so stupid? They're not, actually. The problem with people is simply that we get used to a particular order of things, and we don't notice that it's changing. And if we happen to get on a roll with something that happens to be non-renewable or not that cannot be continued indefinitely, we don't like to deal with that. And that's been the situation for the last 300 years. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we figured out that we could raid the planet's cookie jar. Basically the planet's stash of stored carbon in the form of coal, oil, and natural gas, and use it to fuel a 300-year-long joyride. And that's exactly what we've done. Every year we've dug more, we've pumped more, we've drilled more, we've extracted more carbon from the planet, burnt it. Woohoo! We've had a grand time.
Yeah.
Except now the bill's coming due. It's like any really wild party. You wake up the next morning, you've got a lampshade on your head, you're sprawled on the floor. The place has been torn up. People have emptied their various biological necessities in various random places. It's a mess. And there's a huge bill for liquor that you don't remember ordering. That's basically the situation we're in now. And so everybody's trying to figure out, is there any more booze so I can drink myself into oblivion and not notice? Put off that reckoning for a little while longer. This is not a useful strategy, but it's a very human one.
John, is this why people are into the end of the world scenarios? Because they figure that if the world comes to an end, hey, I don't have to worry about the mess.
If the world comes to an end, we don't have to clean up our mess. Exactly. And we don't have to deal with the situation that we've made for ourselves. I think of a person that a friend of mine talked to right before the Y2K non-crisis happened. She was talking to him and saying, I'm really, really worried about this whole Y2K business. He was going, okay, I understand that. Your banks might shut down, power shut down, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But no, that was not it. She put him straight. Her life was at a dead end. Her career was falling apart. Her marriage was breaking down. The thing that horrified her was that she'd have to wake up on December 1st, 2000, and go on with the life that she made for herself. And she would rather have seen civilization crash into ruin and end up huddling in a burnt-out basement than go on with her own life. We get a lot of that nowadays, and that's what's behind the rapture bunnies and the whole 2012 business and everything. Don't make us clean up our mess.
So what we're doing is we're not accepting responsibility for what we've created. We're saying, all right, listen, why don't you start off with a clean slate, destroy the earth, kill everybody here and start all over again.
Except, of course, everybody who gets into the apocalypse thing, they don't think they're going to be one of the people who die.
Yeah,
you're going to be the one who gets raptured up into heaven with Jesus, or you're going to be one of those plucky survivors, the 6 or 7 Hollywood stars in every disaster movie you've ever seen, or what have you. It's just, everybody has that fantasy. They're not going to be the one who gets stomped.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things.
John, how can we better ourselves so that we work with Mother Nature, the living earth, and stop ruining her?
Well, the first thing to do is to understand where our ideas and our basic assumptions don't work. And that's one of the things that my book is about. It basically breaks down the core ideas of ecology into 7 basic principles, which I call the law of wholeness, the law of flow, the law of balance, the law of limits, the law of cause and effect, the law of the planes, and the law of evolution. We can get into those at some point if you like. But basically, these are 7 basic concepts about the way the world actually works. And so I basically show how we can apply each of those to our lives and say, look, this works, that doesn't. So if we start by changing our thinking and then proceed to change our behavior, to look at the actual limits. I know for some people that's a swear word. You can't say limits. Limits are bad. I mean, these are people right now who are counting on the limits of the chair under them to keep them from falling onto the floor. Limits are essential.
But limits are
a
fallacy.
I had a very funny experience once. I was invited to this big conference on nature spirituality at a retreat center in the Pacific Northwest, and there are people from many different spiritual traditions there. And everybody was supposed to get up and talk for about 15 minutes about what they felt was really important to grasp. And so I stood up and started talking about limits. And it was a warm summer day, but the temperature in that room dropped 30 degrees by the time I'd said about half a dozen words. It was funny. Nobody wanted to hear about limits. But in fact, think about your body, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Your body has certain limits. It needs those limits to survive,
Yeah.
okay? You've got the limits of your bones keep you from collapsing into a puddle of jelly on the floor. The limits of your immune system keep germs from just walking in and taking over.
Yeah.
The limits of your skin keep your body fluids from flowing all over the place. We
But
won't
the
even
limitation-
talk about the limits imposed by your sphincters.
But then again, John, the limitations that people put on their own sanity and their own awareness of the world around them is detrimental.
The point is that you choose the limits. You understand because you can't, for example, you can't have infinite perception of everything at once. If you do that, you will go mad. If you even make the attempt, you can't let everything into your mind at once. The point is you choose what you're going to limit, what you're not.
So we're our own worst enemies.
Always.
Yeah. Sad world.
And we're our own worst enemies because we fail to pay attention to the limits that matter. Things like you can't keep on increasing your energy use indefinitely without unbalancing the climate and running out of fuel, usually about the same time. And we fail to say, okay, well, let's accept that limit and let's push the limits of our own capacity for generosity and caring. I bet we can do a lot more of that than we've done so far.
I noticed in the information that Lisa Trudeau at Wiser Books had sent us is that there's the law of wholeness, the law of flow, the law of balance, the law of limits, the law of cause and effect, the law of planes, and the law of evolution. What's the law of wholeness?
The law of wholeness is that's the first law. That's the foundation of everything. The recognition that everything that is part of a whole system.
Right.
Nothing stands aside. Nothing is outside. This means, among other things, that there is no such place as away. You throw something away, pollution goes away. No, it doesn't. There is no such place. If you dump something into the water supply, you're going to be drinking it before long. It's a whole system. Everything is part of a single system, and it all cycles back around. That's the law of wholeness.
So what goes around comes around.
What goes around comes around. And there again, we have an ecological principle, which is also a basic spiritual principle. One of the points of the book is precisely that if you understand ecology, you actually understand the core teachings of the great spiritual teachers of our species, because they're talking about the same thing.
The law of flow.
The law of flow. Everything flows.
Yeah.
You think you can grab onto something, you can't. You think you can cling to something. You also think, especially if you're an American or to some extent a Canadian, I don't think you guys are quite as bad off as we are down here, you think you can pile up endless amounts of it and hang on to it. Well, of course, then you die, which doesn't help. But generally speaking, trying to interfere with flow to build accumulation, to mass stuff up, is a self-defeating game. It's a sucker's game.
Well, of course, the old saying, you can't take it with you.
You can't take it with you.
Exactly.
And even while you live, okay, you buy a huge McMansion, you fill it with stuff, you get so much additional stuff that you have to stick it into storage. I mean, we're the only civilization in human history that's built an entire industry around building vast warehouses to store things that people buy and don't need. And don't even have enough need for that they need to get into it anytime soon.
And of course, now you've got the television shows, you've got hoarders, you've got rental wars. Is it rental wars?
You got all this crap.
Yeah.
And in fact, all this stuff is flow.
Storage wars. I'm sorry.
Go with the flow, if you will, and let things flow, and be aware that, among other things, an economy thrives best when there's cash flow, not cash accumulation. Our economies right now are crippled because we've got too much money being accumulated by too few people. They're not letting it flow.
Stand by, John. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour.
Let's take our news break.
Always great talking to you, John. Thanks very much for joining us. Exonation John Michael Greer is our special guest. The ArchdruidReport.blogspot.com. The name of his new book, Mystery Teachings from the Living Earth. John and I will be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
And welcome back, everyone. John Michael Greer is my guest of this hour. His blog spot, a great read, the Archdruid Report. .blogspot.com. That's the Archdruid Report.blogspot.com. First of all, John, always great having you with us here. And, we're talking about your new book, Mystery Teachings from the Living Earth. And we talked about the law of wholeness. We talked about the law of flow. Now, I think the law of balance is pretty self-explanatory.
It is. We all know it. We all pretend it doesn't apply to us. It always spins around and kicks us in the butt, and then eventually, hopefully, we get a clue.
And, of course, the law of limits, I'm sure, it works the same way.
We talked about that in the last segment. In fact, we all depend on limits. We can choose to some extent what limits we will have, and that's the basis for power. That's the basis for achievement. It's the basis for beauty. Any manifestation happens because you limit all of the other things that something could be. It's like, when you're about to paint a painting, you've got a perfectly blank canvas. It's limitless. Once the first dab of paint goes on, that limits what you can do with it from then on. And by the time you finish the process, it's completely in place, completely manifested, completely limited. It is what it is. The same is true with everything else.
The law of cause and effect. Everybody knows
laws
that.
of cause and effect. But it has a detail that a lot of people tend to miss, especially in the spiritual scene. Of course, every cause has an effect. Every effect has a cause. Everything has causes that are, at least one of the causes has to be of the same kind as the effect. For example, a heated argument is not going to start a house fire. You need like a spark or a match or something like that. And the total sum of causes have to be equivalent to the effect. You're not going to cause some vast, like the want, for want of a nail, the horseshoe was lost, and so on and so forth. Yes, but only if you have a whole bunch of other causes flowing in to lead to, the loss of the kingdom at the end of the rhyme. So there are these factors in cause and effect that have to be understood, or you're going to try causing vast changes with half-vast, if you'll excuse my expression, capacities or causes.
It sounds like a lot of common sense.
Well, yes. It's just common sense has been rather in short supply in recent years.
Yes, isn't that the truth?
Yeah, you'd think that it would be common sense to look at the fact that we've already burnt our way through about half the world's original petroleum supply, and that it's going to be harder to get. It's going to be lower quality. It's going to be much more expensive to pump out. It's beginning to run short. We can't simply increase the supplies. This means we have to scale back and not, just put the pedal to the metal and just try to keep on leading the rip-roaring lifestyles we've had in the last, few decades. But that's a piece of common sense that's beyond a lot of people, and especially beyond a lot of politicians.
Well, of course, and then there's the other alternative, John, where all these great minds that are putting things on Mars could bring their minds back to this planet and find alternative energy.
Well, yes. And we could also learn to use the amount of energy we naturally get
responsibly
from wind and things like that efficiently. We are so sloppy in our energy use. I mean, it does not take the amount of energy that an American or a Canadian uses in a course of a year to fuel a comfortable lifestyle. You go to Europe, they use about a third as much, and, they have like civilized lifestyles, or they don't live in caves or anything. In many ways, their lifestyles are better than ours, and yet they use a third the energy we do. We could do the same thing easily, but we won't, because on the one hand we're not too bright about energy. On the other hand, a lot of people are making a lot of money off of selling us more energy than we need.
Well, we're a very wasteful society as well, John. You can see that by the amount of garbage we generate, and the amount of food that just goes into the garbage disposal units.
It just goes into the waste stream. Yeah, pollution is a resource that is in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But and this is in nature. Everything cycles back around. One creature's waste stream is another creature's food supply, and we can do this ourselves with something as simple as a compost heap. Instead, we flush it down the garbage disposal or what have you, and it ends up becoming a problem for someone else.
Yeah, we pass our problems along instead of facing them, acknowledging them, and fixing them.
And fixing them, and then learning that there are benefits to fixing them. Yeah, and we pass them along, so does the other person, and again they come around and bite us in the butt.
Yeah,
that's the law of wholeness.
What's the law of planes, John?
The law of planes. This is something that really is primarily addressed at some of the mistaken notions in the spiritual communities these days. The law of planes it points out that different kinds of things that we experience function on what people in the mystery traditions call different planes of existence. We have thoughts, okay? A thought may be a thing, but it's not the same kind of thing as, say, a brick. And there are ways you can move from the plane of thoughts to the plane of bricks and vice versa, but it's not an automatic thing. So the people who spend all of their time, trying to think themselves into prosperity, let's say, yes, you can accomplish some things that way, especially if it's your thinking and the actions based on your thinking that are keeping you poor, usually by spending more money than you earn. But if you just expect your thoughts to affect the material world straight off, you're going to run into one problem after another. In the same way, people spend their time chasing wealth, filling their houses with all the crap and all of the, filling their storage lockers with stuff they don't actually want. They're actually trying to fill an emotional need, but they think they can do it by manipulating physical matter. They can't, and so they're caught in this sort of hamster wheel process. So the law of planes is that it's very important to differentiate the plane on which anything you're actually trying to achieve actually takes place. Is it a thought? Is it emotion? Is it a brick? Or what?
All right, the final law that we have here is the law of evolution.
The law of evolution. And there we're going to have to unhook, about 100, more than that now, but well over 150 years of gibberish.
Wow.
People say evolution and they think progress.
Yeah.
We have this fantasy of progress. We have this religion of progress in the modern industrial world. We think that the universe has handed us a ticket that says that everything gets better over time. That's not, I mean, that's the whole idea. My children should have a better life than I do, off in the future. Eventually we'll go zooming off into space to some kind of Star Trek future metastasizing across the galaxy. No. Evolution is just adaptation to circumstances. That's all it is. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't lead anywhere. It's not this sort of grand march of progress with us, of course. Humanity is the leading edge. I mean, this fantasy that we're more evolved than other things, that some people are more evolved than us, is garbage. We've all been through exactly the same, 2.5 billion years of evolution as a blue-green algae. In fact, they got it right. They got it right about 1.5 billion years ago. They haven't had to fix anything since. We're still trying to get it right. But so evolution is simply it's a process of adaptation over time. And the point of the law of evolution is that it points out that things change over time, that they change by adapting to changing circumstances, and that they're not leading to any grand and glorious goal. We can't sit on our hind end and wait for the rapture. We can't sit on our hind end and wait for 2012 to bring a marvelous new age of consciousness that we don't have to work for.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah. We're going to get exactly the world that we ourselves are willing to build with our own thoughts, our own actions, our own choices.
And the funny part, John, well, it's not funny, it's very pathetic, is that over the years, throughout the centuries, we have not learned through our mistakes. Mm-hmm. We still keep on making the same mistakes, doing the same thing, looking for a different reaction. It's insane.
Evolution is a slow process. We have not yet adapted to the fact that our minds can come up with fantasies that are very emotionally appealing, but that don't actually have anything to do with the world in which we happen to live. And I think eventually, over millennia to come, we may finally grasp that detail, and then the world will be a rather different place for us. But until then, it's purely a matter of people like me, like other mystery teachers out there, who are saying, okay, here are some things to think about that cast the world in a very different light, and why don't you think about your life in this context? Why don't you try practicing a little meditation, let's say, and see if you can get your mind a little clearer? Maybe even, step back out of all the yelling and chaos and confusion, and think for yourself for a change.
You know what, John? I believe in my heart of hearts that technology is working against us.
Oh, yeah.
It's come to a point where families don't talk. They text each other. You've got people who finish their job, they rush home to enter a world of virtual reality that isn't real because they can be who they want to be in a fantasy life.
Absolutely. Or they could just turn on the television and absorb themselves in the in the activities and emotions of people who don't actually exist. Which is the thing is, all that technostructure is a way of running away from the basic realities of human existence, and it depends on having these immense amounts of highly concentrated, cheap energy, which we're using up. So I see the problem with technology in that sense as self-correcting. As the availability of energy goes down, as the availability of resources go down, as the price of both goes up, a lot of people are going to find themselves suddenly deposited outside of their virtual reality back in the real world. And then they're going to have to learn.
It's going to be very hard for them, though.
It's going to be a rough road. Evolution usually is.
When people talk about druids, John, the first thing that they think of, and this is based on what I've done over the last 20 years talking to people, is they do an automatic connection between a druid and Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, yeah.
What did the druids actually do at Stonehenge?
They didn't. Well, not until about 300 years ago. As far as we know, Stonehenge, nobody's really sure. There were no written records. Nobody knows when the Druids got started, the original ancient Celtic Druids, I should say, when they got started, because they also didn't keep any written records. One of the few things we know about them is that they thought that writing was a bad idea. They thought that it spoiled your memory. And so it's a technology thing. Yeah, this hot new technology called writing. I don't know about that. But its current theory is that Stonehenge was built some hundreds of years at least. The oldest aspect of it was some thousands of years, but it was finished some hundreds of years before the first of the Celtic peoples came to Britain, and those were the peoples who had druids as their priests and intellectuals. Starting in about what would it have been? It would have been the early 1700s. When you had the beginning of the Druid revival of people who were inspired by what little was known of the ancient Druids and went out to create a nature-based spirituality in contradiction to the orthodox religion of the time and to the very dogmatic scientific materialism of the time. A lot of them, because of course nobody knew when Stonehenge had been built back in those days, back in the 18th century. And so they thought, well, there were these druids, and here's this ancient thing that is right out there in the open, surrounded by, the sky and the wind and the grass and everything. I bet it was a druid temple. They were wrong, but it was still a cool place to go and celebrate the solstices and so on. And so since sometime in the 18th century, modern druids have been going to Stonehenge, and I've been there. I've celebrated the summer solstice there. It's a lovely place to do a ritual.
Did you feel anything, any spiritual presence? Did you feel any earth powers?
Less so there. I think it's had too many tourists. To be quite frank, there are some of the old stone circles where there's definitely a feeling of something very alive in the ground. But Stonehenge, it's been asleep for a long time, I think. But it's still a very beautiful place. You're standing there just before dawn. We were fortunate one of those rare days when it's actually clear and sunny in Britain. I know that's not supposed to happen. But we were lucky. There we were, the wind blowing across the grass and the big gray stones against the gray, slowly lightening sky, and then the sun rises in the east right over the Heelstone. It was great.
So is the Stonehenge formation just an ancient observatory?
We have no idea.
No,
lots of people have all kinds of speculations. I mean, probably the funniest one that I ever saw was the guy who came up with his bogus website on ancient Druid computers, claiming that Stonehenge was actually a computer complex.
Well, there you go. That goes to prove my comment about modern technology.
Modern technology, yeah.
John, stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation John Michael Greer is our special guest. His new book, Mystery Teachings from the Loving Earth. His blog site is the archdruidreport.blogspot.com. John Michael Greer and I will return on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
18 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today. www.soulbalancing.world.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Exonation, John Michael Greer has been my guest this hour. His new book, Mystery Teachings from the Living Earth, and his blog spot is www.thearchdruidreport.blogspot.com. John, last time you were on with us, we were talking about the apocalypse, and you know what? Laura and I went down to the Mayan ruins. We talked with the Mayans. We went through Mexico, Belize, Honduras. You know, we spoke to the scholars. We spoke to many of the Mayans themselves, who, by the way, I don't know why people think they're extinct. There's over 2 million of them still living.
Of course there are.
Yeah.
But it's much more convenient to spin fantasies about the Mayans if you can pretend they don't exist anymore.
There's only one thing they love about the 2012 hype, and that's the increase in tourism.
Oh, it's got to be. It's got to be making their day.
It is.
Except then you have to deal with all these clueless gringos.
Yeah. So why is it then, John? You know, 2012. 2000 Y2K was doom and gloom. There's been over 200 or 300 other dates that have come and gone. December the 21st, 2012, people are looking at either the galactic alignment or the second coming of Christ, or my idea is, okay, let's go to the Red Rocket store, get 3 pounds of wings, and sit down and watch everybody make fools of themselves.
I think it's an excellent idea, and it's one that has a lot of historical, a lot of historical panache behind it, because that's exactly what a lot of people have done when these past things have happened, and they've always been right.
They have.
You pick up the wings and a couple of beers and watch people make fools of themselves. And I'm sure people were doing that in the 5th century BC.
John,
I don't know if they had wings handy, but whatever the local snack food was.
What really makes me laugh is here we've got a technologically advanced society. We can put people on the moon. We can put robots on Mars. We can go to the very depths of the ocean. And yet we still look at a groundhog to predict the weather.
That's good, yes.
Is it me? Do I see things strangely? What am I missing?
No, it's very simple. We have all of these toys that we're powering by breaking into Earth's carbon cookie jar. But we're still the same people. We're still the same human beings. All the toys have not changed. The fact that we're right there with the medieval peasants, convinced of the wonder-working powers of this, standing stone in the local fields. Yeah. We haven't changed that much. We just project our fantasies onto different things. We project them onto the Mayans. We project them onto complete misreadings of the Book of Revelation. We project them onto the singularity. Computers are going to become, the surrogate gods and grant us immortality, or what have you. It's the same basic human situation from which each of us has the opportunity of stepping back a little bit and trying and working on the process of getting more of a clue.
And if all
more of a state of consciousness.
And of course, if all else fails, get yourself a groundhog.
Get yourself a groundhog. Yeah.
John, I want to thank you.
I've got one in the backyard I can lend you.
John, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you, my friend. Quickly, give our listeners your blog address.
Okay, the blog is thearchdruidreport.blogspot.com, and my books can be got at your favorite full-service bookstore or direct from the publisher. In this case, it's redwheelwiser.com.
Nice talking to you, John. Take care of yourself. Look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone.
I look forward to it also.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye. And don't forget to feed your groundhog. X Zone Nation, John Michael Greer has been my guest this hour. Once again, thearchdruidreport.blogspot.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the hour as the X Zone continues. With yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our studios here in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Dare to believe and dare to be heard. We'll be back. Don't go away.